Hello, and how are you doing today? I have a very, very special guest, someone who I've been stalking for years, and she doesn't even know this. So she might be off. She might be like, oh my God, I'm creeped out. I'm out of here. But no, I think I don't think, I know you are going to love meeting Anastasia, and you're going to have a ball with this conversation because she is like the epitome of so much fun. So thank you all for being here. Anastasia, thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. I am doing wonderful today. It's a beautiful day, and I get to talk about things that are fun and exciting. So, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, real quick, tell everybody about you, and then I'll fill in my backstory. Just a little bit about your bio or whatever you'd like them to know.
Yeah, so my name is Anastasia Allison, and I'm the founder of a company called Kula Cloth. And we make a antimicrobial pee cloth for anybody who squats when they pee. A pee cloth is a leave no trace toilet paper option to make your experiences when you're out hiking or outside recreating a little bit more comfortable. I am a former park ranger and former railroad police officer, actually turned full-time entrepreneur after a near-death experience. I have always been really obsessed with the outdoors. That was always the place where I found a feeling of peace in my life. But for the majority of my experience in life, I told myself I couldn't pursue that as a path. And this near death experience kind of changed my life. And I decided to figure out something new for myself. So I left those careers behind, embarked on something that felt a little bit a little bit more in alignment with what I was interested in, and I've been doing that ever since.
You know what? We are all very lucky,
Mm.
very, very lucky. And if you don't mind, I'll tell you how I found you. So, I have a violin, and that poor thing is like tortured by me. It is such a tragedy. This poor thing should get a new home. But one day I'm torturing my violin and I think, and then I sit down at my computer. I thought I should find somebody else who plays. So I'm digging around and I find these two women on the top of a mountain. Okay. They're dressed in formal attire. One of them has a keyboard, the other one has a violin, and they're playing, and they are amazing, amazing. I'm like, whoa, what is this? Right? So I just immediately dive down that hole, and it's the Musical Mountaineers. Turns out I don't even realize this is you. Okay. This goes back a number of years ago. But I follow you for a very long time. And somehow we lost touch. You didn't even know we lost touch, but we did. And then along the way, the Kula Cloth. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, this is what. And we're going to talk a lot about peeing in the woods because that's a big deal, right? It's a big deal if you're a woman and you're like, what do we do about peeing? So fast forward, I buy a couple of Kula Cloths. This particular one I'm showing you right now is from a friend of mine, Jennifer. Shout out to Jennifer if you're listening. She bought it for me before my glacier trip last year, and I was like, "Oh, how sweet!" And I'm not going to tell you exactly how you use a Kula Cloth because that's Anastasia's job. But I get on her email list, and so I'm on Anastasia's email list and for the Kula Cloth. And one day I'm cleaning out my emails. I'm like, great company. I don't need to be getting any more emails. Like I'm viciously slashing emails right and left. And I go to hit that unsub button and I see this little thing that says something about if you're getting ready to leave us, that's okay. But you should probably see something. All right, you guys are going to think this is crazy, but you got to do it. See something about Miss Kitty in the tower. I'm like, what? So I click on it and it is the craziest video I've ever seen. It is so funny. It's Anastasia dressed up as Miss Kitty. She's being held captive in a tower. You have to watch it to get it. Watch it 3 times. I don't watch anything 3 times, and by this time, I'm like, "No way is this woman getting out of my world." So then the next thing I do is I get an email from her company, a couple of months, years later, whatever, and it's something about a possum, and I love possums. So I start reading. I did something I never do. I have a rule in the morning. I do not do social. I do not do my phone. I do not do internet. It is my rule. I broke every rule I had that day because I read and read and read all this stuff that Anastasia had written. And I'm like, wait a second. This woman is magic. Not only does she have a company about how to pee in the woods happily. She writes like a dream, and she brings something special to everybody. And that's when I reached out to you that day. I was like, "Okay, wait a second. I don't care. We gotta get you on here so that everyone can meet you." So, now
Oh,
that you know my backstory, how I've been stalking you for years, you can.
it's so sweet. And, I didn't mention the Musical Mountaineers when I introduced myself, but the Musical Mountaineers is this duo, as you alluded to, of myself and my friend Rose. And we carry these violin and a piano up in the backcountry and we play unannounced concerts for nobody. And it's really funny because there's so many people who follow the Musical Mountaineers, but like Kula Cloth is so different that they never make the connection that it's the same person. So I
Mhm.
can't tell you, it's happened many times where I will like see the gears turning in their mind where all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, you're the same person. It's the Kula Cloth lady, Musical Mountaineers lady. And I'm like, yep, that's it.
It's true. I mean, you get these massive, like this gear, some people carry backpacks. Nope. They're carrying massive musical pieces up, and it's so funny. So,
Yeah.
we will link to Musical Mountaineers in the show notes for sure because you have to listen and you've got to watch. Like, you just got to watch it because it is really so different when you see somebody who is playing a musical instrument. They're dressed to the nines. They're in gowns often. And then you've got Anastasia and the pea and the wood cloth. So tell us about the
Yeah.
Kula cloth because I think it's something everyone needs.
Yeah. So I first heard of just the concept of using a pea cloth many, many years ago. I started backpacking when I moved to Washington State to become a park ranger. And actually, on my very first backpacking trip ever, I forgot toilet paper, which is sort of
Whoops.
this, yeah, like the irony of that and what I do for a living now, like it's not lost on me.
Trauma
So,
leads to things.
yes, it does. I mean, talk about coming full circle. And so I got into hiking in a very big way, and I ended up becoming a volunteer for an organization here in Washington State called Washington Outdoor Women, where got a volunteer position teaching about hiking and backpacking to women specifically. And it was on one of my personal backpacking or hiking trips that I had seen so much toilet paper just like
Yeah,
left in the
I know.
backcountry. It's disgusting. And I went home from that trip and I did a quick Google search on leave no trace toilet paper options. And this article popped up about using a pea cloth. And my first instinct was like, "Oh my gosh, that's
Right?
disgusting.
Yeah.
Who would do that?" But then I thought, "Wait a second here. I'm an instructor. I should at least try this, and if I like it, maybe it's something I could teach my students about." And so I went out and I bought this ugly square of fabric, just a piece of microfiber. I flipped it onto my backpack, and on my next hike, I used this pea cloth. And really, the purpose of a pee cloth is to keep you dry and comfortable when you pee. So I used it and just was shocked at how much of a difference it made because not only was I now not hauling in and out dirty toilet paper, but I felt cleaner. I felt more comfortable. Like my hike was so much different because I was able to actually focus on just being out there and hiking, not feeling disgusting or unclean.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching all of my students about using a pea cloth. And it was in 2016. I was on a backpacking trip of my own in the Wind River Range. And I was doing this silly joke. I was taking photographs of my pea cloths as a joke for a friend. I was going to take photographs of my pea cloth in all of these like beautiful settings. And I had this idea I was going to make it into a series of greeting cards to give to her. Um, I always say now, I'm like, I don't know what that says about me as a friend, but I have a good sense of humor, and I knew she would find this very funny because we kind of had a joke about pea cloths. And so I was taking this spectacular photo of my ugly scrap of fabric pea cloth. And as I took the photograph, it was like the universe gave me this little spark of inspiration in that moment. And it was very, very clearly, why isn't that a real piece of gear? And it felt like I physically felt the question enter my mind. And I was like, oh, I don't know why it's not a real piece of gear. I wonder if anybody's ever done that. And so I went home from that trip and got super inspired. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make a pea cloth. And then within a day or two of doing some research on how to start a company and how to sell and like textiles and like, how do I even design a product? What do I do? I quit 100%, just
Sure.
quit. I was like,
It's
nope,
overwhelming.
this is too hard. I won't do it.
Yep.
Nobody will ever buy it. So, fast forward about a year or so, I have this near death experience. And suddenly I realized that most of the things that I was afraid of were things that were manufactured in my own mind. Like I was the one holding me back, not anybody else. And so I borrowed a serger from a friend and I started doing more research. I started calling textile mills. I started like making prototypes on my own. I figured out how to sew a square. They didn't look good at first. They looked like just blobs of shapes sort of sewn together. But eventually I kind of, once you get some momentum going, the answers start to arrive. And I had some folks testing the product for me. And then in July of 2018, I launched our website with a pre-sale. And then in November of 2018, I started shipping out the very first Kula Cloths all over the world. And so I will take you on a little tour of the Kula Cloth so that
Okay.
folks who are unfamiliar with the idea of a pea cloth. Now, I also want to say that I'm not a person who judges anybody for what they decide to do. I recommend that people do what feels good to them. So if using a pea cloth doesn't feel good to you, that's totally fine. You can always use toilet paper. I just really encourage folks to pack that out because toilet paper does take 1 to 3 years to decompose sometimes, if not more, in really fragile environments. But typically, if we are peeing in the woods, we want to do that at least 200 feet or more away from natural water sources like streams or lakes. The only exceptions to that are places where there is an extremely high water flow and an even more fragile landscape on the out outer edges of that. So the
Right.
example I'm thinking is the Grand Canyon. So if you're in the Grand Canyon, they actually encourage you to pee in the river, not on the fragile banks. So there are some places where there's some variance in that general rule, but in general, 200 feet or more away from water sources on a durable surface, if you're able to. So don't trample a meadow to go pee. The durable surface might be the trail. It might just be like peeing on the trail. But you squat down, pull your pants down, find a place to pee. And I'll give some other options on the squatting too as I continue talking about this. But essentially, how a Kula cloth works is that the print side is waterproof so that your hands are not going to get dirty when you use the antimicrobial absorbent side. So you will pee like normal, and then you're basically using the absorbent side of the Kula not to wipe from front to back, but to pat dry. Or a lot of times I will just sort of hold it in place and you can feel when you've dried off adequately. Once you have used this side of the Kula, you can use this. So I will snap it back to my backpack using this little snap up at the top. And then there is an additional snap down at the bottom of the Kula so that you can actually fold the diamond in half. It sort of looks like a taco when you do this, or kind of a triangle. And what this does is that now the waterproof side of the Kula cloth is protecting that inside. It's protecting any of the pee, the side that's been used and has pee on it now from touching your backpack. Also, if you set your backpack down while you're hiking and your pea cloth hits the ground, it's really good to know that the thing that's touching a sensitive part of your body isn't just laying in dirt or whatever happens to be on the trail. I use my Kula cloth all day long, over and over again throughout the day. And then I simply wash it in my sink when I get home. I just use a little bit of Bronner's peppermint soap to sort of scrub it, wash it off, rinse it out, and then I hang it to dry. You can also put it in a standard washer dryer. However, if you do that, I would recommend just making sure that it's snapped closed so that this strap doesn't get caught in the agitator of your washing machine. And it's helpful to keep it away from things with Velcro because that could sort of impact the thread around the edge. The other feature of the Kula cloth, and this might apply to folks who are maybe just going on a camping trip, or maybe you're in your RV or doing something where it might get dark. And now you're looking for it in the middle of the night. This is actually a strip of reflective thread here so that you can find it at night with your headlamp. Now, the Kula cloth is realistically just one option in sort of a sea of options of how to handle peeing outside. If you are uncomfortable with the idea of using a Kula cloth, other people who also use a pee cloth, they could use a piece of fabric or a bandana, whatever feels good to them. I think what I like about the Kula cloth and what other people like about the Kula cloth as well is that it is intentionally designed fabric for the purpose of hygiene. It's easy to keep clean. You know which side you've used. Like
Right. Right.
there's no question about which side is dirty. And I think it has reduced the squeamishness around number one, just the idea of using a pea cloth. And then number two, being able to talk about hygiene when we're outside in general, because I know that that's something that can be an uncomfortable subject for some folks.
It's one of those things that it probably like when I take people on like an adventure retreat, usually if somebody hasn't been with me before or they haven't done a lot of hiking, usually they get me aside before the event, before they've even signed up for the event. And they're
Yeah.
like, what do we do about peeing? And
Mhm.
like everybody has ideas. And my only like rule is you carry it out. If you're going to use toilet paper, you carry it out. And I don't really
Yeah.
care. But what I've seen is that you've created like a secret society. It's, there's a secret society of women out there, and you've got your Kula cloth on your pack, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, hi, I know you.
Yeah. Isn't that, so this is funny, Kelly, that you mentioned that. When I was coming up with the name for Kula Cloth, I mean, that's a big deal. Like, what do you call your product? And very, very intentionally, like I looked at all these other hygiene items out there, and they all had these like goofy, jokey names.
Right.
And to me, it kind of enhanced a little bit that idea of like shame or discomfort
Yeah.
around hygiene. And so with Kula Cloth, I want the word Kula means community. And I always wanted the focus of Kula Cloth to be more on the conversations we have, the interactions we have, the people that we meet when we're out there on the trail. And it's funny because when people think of Kula Cloth, like, yeah, it's a pea cloth, but it's funny because pea is usually not the first thing that people think about. They think about like, oh, the people that they've met through Kula Cloth,
Right.
or, this feeling of inspired adventure. And one of the other names that I was considering at the time when I was naming the product was the wink cloth. And the reason why I said wink is because I had this vision of people out there hiking and like seeing somebody else with a Kula and kind of giving them this little
They do.
figure
They
wink,
do.
like, hey, I know what that is. And what's also so cool about the Kula is that it opens up the conversation around leave no trace, around peeing, around hygiene in a really organic and natural way. It has been proven that shaming people into following leave no trace is not super effective.
Mm-mm.
But when you have a product like a Kula Cloth where somebody who genuinely doesn't know how to handle their hygiene they ask a question, which could be as simple as, hey, what's that? All of a sudden, you have this very organic and natural interaction where people are exchanging information, and it empowers everybody to make their own decision about how to handle their waste in the backcountry. And I have heard from folks that over the past 6 years that Kula Cloth has existed, that they have seen less and less toilet paper in the backcountry. And that is not just because of the Kula Cloth. It is because of the conversations that the Kula Cloth has encouraged. Because more and more people are suddenly open to talking about it. And it becomes like the new paradigm is not pee and leave your toilet paper. The new
Right.
paradigm is like pee and either pack it out or use a Kula or another type of a pee cloth or whatever. But it's the new normal to do that, and
Yeah.
that's really exciting to me.
It is so exciting. I mean, it's that awareness that we need, and it is I've had the same experience. Like, you don't expect to see that in certain places. Like,
Yeah.
immediately, I can, like, think of 3 places in my head where I'm like, "Ah, wish that hadn't happened." So,
Yeah. Well,
congratulations. Thank you.
and it also, one of the most memorable emails that I ever got, it was in the early days of Kula Cloth, and it was a woman who had been hiking for most of her life, and she genuinely had never really been taught or felt comfortable asking anybody about handling peeing outside. And this woman wrote me this very heartfelt email telling me that she had been intentionally dehydrating herself
Oh
before
my.
hikes so that she didn't have to pee. And she told me that Kula had changed her life. And it seems like such a small thing, right? Knowing how to wipe when you're out there or knowing how to pee. But I would argue that it's actually a big thing, because if you go out on a hike and you spend most of the hike worrying about I shouldn't drink any more water,
Right.
right? Like, nobody goes into the backcountry because they want their minds to be more cluttered.
Right?
People go hiking because they want to feel a sense of peace. They want to feel connection with themselves. They want to feel connection with nature. They want to feel like this sense of awe and wonder. And I really believe that hygiene, not knowing how to handle your hygiene in the backcountry, is a barrier to that awe and wonder for people. Because if you're in your head the whole time worried about toilet paper, you aren't going to have as great of a time out there. And I hope that Kula gives people the ability to have more of the experience that they want out in the backcountry.
Yeah. When you said that, I was at first kind of shocked, and then I realized, no, I know way too many people who dial back on their water consumption
Mhm.
simply because of the whole idea of peeing.
Yeah.
And I get it. I do get it. Definitely. So brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, and kudos to your company, because I think it's so important. And everybody who's listening, I want you to go to the show notes, go to the email that comes out about this, check it out, because you're going to be like, wait a second, tell them about this. What happens when you reuse it? Is that yucky?
It is not yucky. Like I said earlier, I recommend using it or washing it off in the evenings. But maybe this is TMI, but when I was first testing out the Kula Cloth, it's an antimicrobial fabric. It's odor resistant. And that doesn't mean odor proof, but it is odor resistant. I actually used the same Kula Cloth for days at a time without washing it, just to see, okay, how bad is this? Or is this gross? And people what I would really encourage folks to do is try it and then make a judgment about it, because I am somebody who had that same sense of squeamishness that you just hit on, Kelly, where I remember thinking, "Ooh, that's disgusting. I'm going to just keep wiping with the same thing." And I thought it was going to be gross. But what I found when I did it is that it was far less gross. And I've heard this said before, and this was very eye-opening to me. Somebody once said that if you don't use a pea cloth or something to absorb any residual moisture, your underwear becomes the pea cloth.
It does.
And so really is it more disgusting to pat dry using an antimicrobial cloth, or does it feel more disgusting to just pull your underwear back up, and especially for hours and hours at a time on a hike,
Yeah.
that can get uncomfortable. You can get chafing. It makes folks prone to rashes or infections. And most people who use a Kula say that it is the most life-changing piece of gear that they own, and they can't imagine hiking without one anymore.
Yeah. And I just have to say, to speak to what you said, I've had just, I just take one. If I go backpacking for a few days, I just take one.
Mhm.
Um, it's not like anybody's behind me going, oh my God, Kelly, you smell.
Yeah. No, I take one on my trips, and, I'll usually rinse it out in the evening with a bottle of I take, again, if you're washing, and this is sort of an important leave no trace thing, but if you are washing your Kula cloth, you don't wash it out in a creek or a stream, because now you're just putting urine back into the natural
Right.
water system. Usually what I will do is I'll take my water bottle, I'll go 200 feet or more away from natural water sources. I bring a tiny little dropper bottle of soap. I'll wash it and hang it to dry overnight, and it's perfect the next day.
Perfect. I love it. So I want all y'all to get this. If you're going with me on a trip, I will get you one because
Yeah.
we all need.
Aw.
So tell us a little bit more because you've got this, you have this amazing company and a very ironic kind of idiosyncrasy taste of humor going along with it. So what else do you do? Because I know you have other things that go on. Do you have a
I do.
team? Do you train?
Yeah. Yeah. So Kula took on a life of its own. And I already alluded to the fact that the word Kula means community, but we host events. A lot of those are free virtual events where we teach folks important skills about how to get out hiking and backpacking. This past week, I taught a class on how to build your first aid kit for hiking. So we teach classes, we have events. We also have this really unique community of folks that dances every single day. I started what I call the dance experiment. As of the day that we are recording this podcast, today is day 1,266 consecutive days of dancing for me. I have never missed a day. I started dancing not with the intent for it to become anything. It was just like I felt I needed something and I wasn't sure what it was. And I had this idea to start dancing. And about 2 years ago, actually more than 2 years ago, I decided to see if anybody from the Kula community wanted to join me. And as it turns out, they did. And as it turns out, we're all still dancing as a group together. So, and new people join every month. It's open to everybody to join. It's just a donation based program. But we have a group of folks that meets every single morning on Zoom at 6:30 a.m. And not everybody attends every session, but we have 5 different folks that help me lead the sessions, and we get together and dance. And I really feel like, Kula is this physical, it's a piece of gear and helps improve people's lives when they're hiking or recreating. But I've always wanted the product to be sort of a physical representation of something that's much more. And for me, encouraging people to do things that help them become more in touch with the present moment, with making them more aware of the role that mindfulness and meditation play in our lives. That's something that's really important to me. And then just genuinely connecting with other human beings and doing things that feel like they are in service to the greater good. That's like the bigger piece of Kula for me. So I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff all the time. It's sometimes it feels random, but then I kind of look back and see how the pieces connect. And as a business owner, it's really easy to get lost in worrying or fear or overthinking or overworking. And having these outlets like dance or meditation or music for me, that's really the fuel that helps me stay present and connected to myself and not sort of lost in this endless chase for something outside of myself.
Nice. So true. So true. Well, thank you. And is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap? Because like we could do for this, I could talk to you for hours, but I do realize that you do have a company to run.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to share or talk about before we jump off?
I feel like we've covered so much. I just would really want to encourage people to get outside as much as they can, whatever that looks like for them, and live with a sense of openness to the possibilities. I think that's really what Kula has taught me is that when I don't limit myself in my own brain, then the answers, the opportunities, the inspiration, the creativity, that tends to arrive. And one of the places that it is most easy to feel and sense that is when we are outside hiking. And so I would just encourage people, so often in this world, the priority is placed on doing rather than being. And one of the things that I've learned through Kula, and this is funny advice coming from a business owner, but one of the things that I've learned is that if I put my focus on not so much what I'm doing, but how I'm doing it and what am I bringing to each day and what can I do today that's going to make this moment a little bit better, not just for me, but for other people. If that's what I put my focus on, then things naturally progress on their own without me having to try really hard. And I think that's sort of the impact that I want to leave through my little pea cloth.
I absolutely know that that's the impact you're leaving. And
Oh, thank you.
we
That means a
thank you so
lot.
much. Yeah, I mean, we thank you so much for being here because it's not often we just get to find that special person who's, the unicorn and,
Oh,
and everything else in one. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it. And as far as finding you, we'll put your everything in the show notes, but please, what's the website and how do you want people to find you?
yeah. So the Kula Cloth website is just Kula Cloth, Kula, and then the word cloth.com. And our social media is the same at Kula Cloth. And then you could find me on social media. It's just at Anastasia.Allison. And if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out, my email is anastasia@kulacloth.com. I'm pretty reachable. The company's not that big yet that you're gonna have to go through my assistant or anything. It's me answering my emails. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or at least maybe help provide resources if people are curious about Kula or hiking or dancing or whatever it might be.
Awesome. Awesome. And every time we see somebody with a cloth on the trail, we'll give them the wink.
Yeah, give them the wink. Say hi for me.
I will. I will. Thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kelly.